to be quite frank, today we're going to talk about one of the most shocking stories that has come out of the Socialist Conference. We are going to be talking about an organization in Western Massachusetts that is doing so much crazy stuff with kids, trans kids, non-binary kids, gender expansive kids. I have never seen anything like this. Now, the reason that I know about this organization is because they were sponsors at the Collective Power Conference, which is the socialist conference that I went to over the weekend. And I had a conversation with one of their co-directors. Now, of course, they thought that I was just like there to that I was on their team when they had the conversation with me. But I got a whole bunch of their flyers. And one of the things that I got that is probably one of the most useful things to come out of the entire socialist conference is I got a book list of a comprehensive book list of books for trans and non-binary and gender expansive and gender non-conforming and queer, etc., children. There's books for this whole first page is for elementary school kids specifically. They've got a whole section for middle school kids. They've got a whole section for young adult kids. They've got a whole page for educator books. So it's like I got the master teacher's edition of the trans book list at this conference. And so I was always planning on writing this article about this organization specifically to talk about the book list and to make sure that you guys all had access to the book list, and you can absolutely get a PDF copy of the book list in this article. However, when I started researching this organization last night and I went around their website, I took a look at the bios of the people working there, I took a look at some of the other flyers I picked up off the table. Holy hell. This organization, I almost called this article The Conversion Factory, but I didn't want to get sued because it's impossible for me to say whether or not they're like actually converting kids because I don't know. I haven't talked to the kids. I don't know. But they're providing psychotherapy to trans children starting at 2 or 3 years old, depending on who you talk to. The reason I say 2 or 3 is because the co-director of the organization that I spoke to at the conference told me that they are working with a child that is 2 years old. However, on their literature, they say they start working with them at 3 years old. So it could be one, it could be the other, 2 or 3. Either way, pretty effing young. They're doing psychotherapy with these kids. They have support groups for these kids. They have a mentoring program in which they are pairing up trans and non-binary children with adults, trans and non-binary adults that are not members of their family, not friends, just strangers. And they let the kids go hang out with the adults in private places to create their own private, confidential experience. What could possibly go wrong? They are working in K through 12 schools. They are working in libraries. And when I read you the bios of some of the people that are doing therapy with these trans 3-year-olds, you're going to be shocked. Legitimately shocked. It takes a lot to shock me at this point. I have gotten thoroughly desensitized to all of this chaos. So it takes quite a bit to shock me. I was sitting here last night in complete horror of what I was reading. And that's not Let's dig right into it, and let's talk about the third article, the third official article in the My Day with the Socialist series. And this is absolutely the most shocking and, quite frankly, a little bit blackpilling thing that I've seen yet. Allow me to introduce you to an organization called Translate Gender. Translate Gender is a 501c3 nonprofit in Northampton, Massachusetts that is rewriting access for trans, non-binary, and gender-conforming people in relationship, family, and community. Translate Gender was a sponsor of the Collective Power Conference where I was able to pick up a bunch of their materials. Again, all I did was I went up to the table, I picked up their flyers, I had a brief conversation with one of the directors, and I asked them some questions. It was very cordial, it was very nice. I had no problem with it because they thought I was one of them, but I did actually get these materials directly from them. And Translate Gender begins offering gender affirming psychotherapy and support services for trans and non binary children beginning at either 2 or 3 years old, depending on who you talk to. Their co director, James, told me they were working with 2 year olds when I spoke to him, they, at their table at the conference, but the flyer I picked up at the table says that they start at 3 years old. So it's all very confusing. I don't know if they're starting to work with children at 2 years old or 3 years old. Maybe it was a miscommunication, but I think we can all agree that when we look at this flyer and we see 3 to 9 in the youth category, we can make the assumption that they are at least minimally starting to work with trans children at 3 years old, possibly a year earlier. Now let's look at this flyer. You can see it's got their giant logo at the top. Youth and family gatherings, designed to aid caregivers and youth in creating larger networks of support and sharing resources. These open ended family groups include all members of trans families, caregivers and parents, trans and non binary youth between the ages of 3 to 18, their siblings, grandparents, and extended community. We provide 4 separate spaces for participants to connect: adults and caregivers and family members, teens, 13 plus, tweens, 9 to 12, and youth, 3 to 9. And of course, they have a donation for that. And that's that first flyer. Sadly, you can't join their virtual book club for trans and non binary youth, which is called Affirmations, until you're 8 years old. Now, I don't think that this has any function at all to do with not wanting to unduly influence children before their brain is fully developed. I think this has to do with reading level, right? Because 8 years old is what, third grade? So you're getting to a point where you can actually start to like read and understand more like larger books, like in the third grade, right? So they have this affirmations book club. Oh, excuse me. Affirmations trans book club for ages 8 to 14. It's on the first Tuesday of the month and they meet via Zoom. How nice is that? Nice and convenient. Join our virtual book club for trans and non binary youth, ages 8 through 14. Readers can explore, question, and connect with one another through books centering trans, non binary, and gender creative characters. And they even, if you go and buy the books yourself at the bookstore, they even have a discount at the bookstore for the kids to go and to buy the trans books themselves at the bookstore. Isn't that convenient? However, even though you have to be 8 years old to participate in the book club, I do have some good news. You only have to be 5 to join their PAL program for non binary and gender expansive youth. And there's the flyer for the PAL program. We'll read this in a second. What does PAL stand for, do you think? PAL stands for Possibility Adult Leader. They will be your very own trans or non-binary mentor. And I'm missing an E in that. Thy. Hey, maybe that works too, actually, a little bit. When you, as the trans, non-binary, gender expansive 5-year-old, connect with your possibility adult leader, your pal will center your passion and joy in a confidential, easygoing setting that you co-create together. What could possibly go wrong? Looking for a pal? Are you a trans, non-binary, or gender expansive young person, ages 5 through 18? Getting connected with one of our pals, aka Possibility Adult Leader, who serves as your very own trans or non-binary mentor. All PALS center your passion and joy in a confidential, easygoing setting that you co create together. It's up to you. Maybe you want to write poetry, learn a new dance, visit a museum or art gallery, shop for gender affirming clothes together, play a sport, or do something else, possibly in a more private, secluded setting. Sessions for youth are in person in Western Massachusetts, and virtual sessions are also available. Now, I know what you're wondering. Does this amazing organization that starts working with children at 2 or 3 years old, depending on who you talk to, do they also work in K through 12 schools? Yes. Yes, they do. Their inclusion initiative offers training and workshops for all sorts of groups, including K through 12 schools. This is the flyer about their inclusion initiative. The Inclusion Initiative is a project of Translate Gender, a trans-led nonprofit. We offer supportive frameworks, trainings, workshop, inclusion, and equity assessments, and technical assistance for creating accountable and inclusive environments for trans, non-binary, and gender expansive people. Who we work with from K through 12 schools to higher education institutions, grassroots group, to nonprofit orgs, and local businesses. We support growth around issues related to gender, from trainings and admin support to create inclusive policies that impact trans people and their families, to personalized, interactive workshops and discussions. Our approach: we utilize curriculum and tools that created for and by our communities. Our training modules are customizable, and all our offerings are tailored to meet your specific needs. We use real life examples as learning opportunities and work to meet you where you are. We believe that training alone isn't the answer, and with supportive policies and practices and ongoing conversations and advocacy, our communities can thrive wherever they are, especially in schools. Jen, thank you for the super chat. That one book about my aunt is a monster sounds like an imaginary friend. Is that how they're duping kids? I don't know the answer to that, Jen, but that's a really good observation and a good question. There are so many books on that list. I'm going to go and make a whole Twitter thread of all of the books on that list just so people can see how many there are. And by the way, guys, this is why I'm not in favor of book banning, because they're churning out these books all the time. You get one book out of school, they're going to replace it with five more. You get those five out, they're going to replace each of those with five more. And it's like you're constantly like chasing your tail and you're getting nowhere because like it's just it doesn't work. It doesn't actually have the impact you think it has. And so yeah. Yeah. Yeah, James does a good job at looking at the philosophical framework behind this. Where I focus and where I'm different than James Lindsay is my focus is entirely 100% on practical application. So I'm looking at their trainings, I'm looking at their college lectures, I'm looking at their their curriculum, I'm looking at their school policy, I'm doing stuff like this. So James and I generally do come to the same conclusions, but we do it in different ways, which I think is actually really important. But I do recommend, if you want to get into the philosophy behind it, I absolutely recommend you look into him. Moving on. Now, just recently, Translate Gender did actually team up with a teen librarian at the Medfield Public Library to host an LGBTQ plus youth summer series, excuse me. It went so well that they expanded the program to multiple libraries and organizations across the state. This is a review that I found on a review website because this organization has like a great nonprofit badge on their website. And so I followed this nonprofit like award badge to a review site where people are leaving reviews about the organization. And I found this review. I am the teen librarian at the Medfield Public Library. And 2 years ago, I teamed up with the amazing people at Translate Gender to put together an LGBTQ plus youth summer series. We extended this series last year to include multiple libraries and organizations across the state. This collaboration offered a variety of in person and virtual programs and events that included book clubs, art projects, and informational sessions. I really enjoyed planning this series with James, who James is the co-director of the organization, who made everything feel so easy. He was also super supportive and engaged with all collaborators. Working with Translate Gender was an amazing and rewarding experience, and I can't recommend them highly enough. They are doing such important work with our LGBTQ plus youth, and I can't wait to continue to provide programs and events with them. Since they seem to work with schools and libraries, you might be wondering if they also have a comprehensive book list of trans and non binary books for kids, even perhaps beginning in elementary school. And indeed, they do have that list. They do. If you're wondering what books to look for in libraries that teach kids about being trans and non binary, this is a wonderful resource. Now, remember, and I'm serious about this, I don't condone book banning, and I think it's a really bad idea. And I have railed against it from the beginning. And Moms for Liberty can go F themselves. Moms for Liberty has done more damage to the anti woke movement with this book banning bullshit than like any other organization out there. And if you want to know why I do not approve of the book banning, you can follow the link in the article and you can read the article that I wrote about it. However, I am completely in favor of adults taking personal responsibility for them and their children and their family. And, as long as we're not infringing on what other people are doing, I don't really care, right? But if you just want a list of books that maybe you want to keep an eye out for to make, like, if your kids have them or something like that, this is going to be a really great resource. The list has elementary school books, middle school books, young adult books. They even have a book list and curriculum resources for educators. I don't give a fuck for all of the reasons that I have explicitly stated at least 5 dozen times on this channel. And I know you've been in some of those streams, so don't pretend you haven't. I don't care. You are wasting your time. You are wasting your energy. You are wasting your resources. You are giving the left something that they can use against all of us forever ad nauseum, and they have. It has done more damage to the perception of what the anti-woke space is than almost anything that you can possibly do. And guess what? Your little darlings are going to find out about sex at some point. Many of you may remember a time when they hid Playboys under their mattress. And when you are banning books in the libraries, you are actually making those books more enticing for your kids who probably wouldn't have read them anyway. And now all of a sudden, mom and dad don't want me to read this book. I have to find out what's in the book. So don't. I have had this conversation on this channel 19 ways from Sunday. I have laid it all out. If you guys want to continue to focus on things that don't matter, go right ahead, I guess. But I'm not going to coddle this 1 second longer. So much time and energy and resources have been absolutely wasted, thrown out the goddamn window because of the book banning bullshit. I am so tired of it. It is ridiculous. And that's the last thing I'm going to say on that for right now. But here are your book lists. And you can see there's a lot of books. This is just for elementary school kids right there. There's a lot of books that are coming out, have been coming out for a long time. And you know what? Every second that conservatives have spent on trying to get books banned, you know what they could have been doing? They could have been writing books of their own to be able to match all of this stuff that's come out in the last several years. They've got middle school books, they've got young adult books, they've got books for educators, they've got curriculum resources. Where is this from the right? Oh, I'm sorry. They were too busy trying to ban one specific book out of a library, not realizing that book was going to be replaced with 15 other goddamn books. But they got that one book out of the library, so winning, winning, we got one. Do you guys see now why the book banning bullshit doesn't go well? Focus on things that actually matter. But if you want to download this full book list, you can find the PDF on this website, and it's freely available because I wanted it to be available for people. And so you can go and download the book list, and then you just have it with you. There you go. No harm, no foul. Now, here's where we're going to get into the good stuff. Buckle up, folks. Sometimes your trans and non binary children need some attention that is, shall we say, a bit more up close and personal. Translate Gender offers gender affirming psychotherapy. You and your kids can get therapy for individual, couple, polyship. Who knows what that means in the chat? Polyship. Or family therapy that utilizes a trans feminist therapeutic approach in working with LGBTQ plus IA adolescents. And for adults, their practice expands to polyamorous and BDSM relationships. How convenient is that? You can get your trans 3-year-old the psychotherapy that they desperately need at 3 years old to affirm their gender. And in the same location, you can also get help for your poly or BDSM relationship. It's like a one-stop shop. How great. This is from their website. All of these are screenshots from their website. And now what I need is for everyone in the chat to stop talking about the books. I don't want to see one more chat about the books. If I see one more chat about the books, that means you aren't listening to what I'm telling you right now. And this is actually more important. This is where we're going to learn to focus on things that are actually important. We're not talking about polygamy. We're talking about polyamory. Polyamory is just when you're in a relationship with more than one person. That's all it is. So this is from their gender affirming psychotherapy website. Individual therapy. Gender Translate provides individual, couple, polyship, and family therapy focused on supporting and affirming gender complexity in all people. Translate Gender. Apparently I get a little dyslexic sometimes. Translate Gender therapists utilize a trans feminist therapeutic approach in working with LGBTQIA plus adolescents, individuals, and families. Our practice extends to working with couples, polyamorous relationships, BDSM relationships, as well as working with those in alternative family structures. Now, here's the really, 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 really exciting part. Do you guys want to meet some of the therapists that will be working with the 2 or 3-year-old trans kids, depending on who you ask, how young they start? Do you guys want to meet some of the therapists? Mount that like button for me if you would like to meet some of the gender affirming psychotherapists at Translate Gender. First off, we have Owen. Owen, he, him. Owen is currently a clinical social work intern at the Smith School for Social Work and is in the process of obtaining his Master's of Social Work. He has experience working with LGBTQIA plus college students and has taught workshops on gender and sexuality to students and faculty at UMass Amherst. That is the University of Massachusetts Amherst. That is public university, taxpayer funded. Owen's academic work has focused on transgender youth and building systems of support. Owen is interested in working with transgender children, adolescents, and their families. Owen takes a strength-based approach to his work, using a humanistic and narrative approach to facilitate open dialogue. He believes the therapeutic relationship should be one of empowerment and collaboration, including awareness of the individual in their own environment. Owen works hard to fight against systems of oppression and uplift the communities he works with. Outside of Smith and Gender Translate, Owen loves to spend time outside, biking, hiking, playing soccer, and swimming. He also enjoys playing video games and solving his Rubik's Cube 30-second average and hanging out with his wife and their 2 cats. So that's Owen. Obviously woke, but maybe okay, maybe, but let's move on. Let's move on. Meet Shay. They, he. Shay is the co-director and a clinical social work intern that is responsible for this organization's entire clinical practice. I need everyone to sit down. Remember, we maintain a certain amount of calm on this channel, okay? I don't do outrage porn. I don't do any of that. We all need to relax, take a few deep breaths, and enhance our calm for the bio that I'm about to read to you. Shay is Translate Gender's co-director and oversees our clinical services. He is an MSW, Masters of Social Work, candidate at the Smith College for Social Work. As part of their first-year internship with Translate Gender, they founded COACT, a trans, gender-expansive, and/or non-binary youth community theater collective. Shay has a history as a sexuality and relationships educator and a community theater creator. He identifies as a queer, fag, trans, non-binary immigrant living in the United States since 2015. Shay is a Jew of color and a white Ashkenazi Jew who speaks both Hebrew and English. Shay identifies as CRIP with a capital C, being neurodivergent and disabled. Informed by intersectional and decolonized theories and politics, Shay incorporates creativity, storytelling, basic attendance, and play centering on the client's narratives, needs, and desires. He has long-term experience supporting kiddos and youth in their journey to gender self-determination, self-expression, and non-judgmental exploration of identities, including but not limited to gender. The framework that ground his practice are gender justice and anti-racism, intersectional analysis, body positivity, and radical self-love, disability justice, and of course, anti-capitalist forms of care and community. And just if you thought you can't get any better, let's read this last paragraph. When working with adults, his interests and areas of clinical focus include queer sexualities, including kink, leather, and BDSM, non-monogamy, non-hierarchical forms of relationships, sexual trauma, and somatic care, and, of course, spirituality. That, ladies and gentlemen, is Shay, the director of the clinical services for the organization providing gender-affirming psychotherapy to 3-year-old trans children. Let's keep going. Next up, we have Ellie. Ellie is in the process of obtaining their MSW from Smith College School for Social Work and is a clinical social work intern. Ellie's practice is deeply informed by their academic work with women and gender studies, as well as their community organizing experience, each helping to provide a social justice lens for their work today. Their perspective is also informed by queer theory and disability justice, which have been helpful for understanding a broad range of experiences and viewing a person or persons with a larger context of all the systems and communities they interact with. Ellie has gravitated towards a feminist approach for therapy because it allows room to consider the context of the individuals that the individuals exist within. Ellie's areas of interest include working with adolescents, working with families, couples, polyships, sex therapy, mindfulness, somatic and narrative therapies, as well as various therapeutic art modalities. No matter who Ellie is working with, they strive to co create a judgment free, validating space where people feel comfortable to be themselves. Social work is inherently collaborative, and Ellie seeks to encourage the agency and self determination of each individual they work with because they are the experts in their own experiences. Next up, we have Shannon, and Shannon is one of the co founders of Translate Gender. Shannon is a sex educator, gender justice activist, and an LGBTQIA family therapist who was clinically trained at the Smith School for Social Work and the Eastern Group Psychotherapy Society in New York. She currently resides and practices in the Pioneer Valley of Massachusetts. However, she lived in New York City for over a decade, and during that time co-founded the advocacy and education organization Translate Gender, Inc. Shannon has a broad range of expertise, having completed clinical trainings in anxiety disorders, depressive and mood disorders, dual diagnosis, sexuality and gender identity concerns, grief, loss, and trauma. Shannon utilizes a trans feminist therapeutic approach in working with differently gendered adolescents, individuals, and trans families. Her interests extend to working with couples, polyamorous relationships, polyships, and groups, and she especially enjoys working with those in alternative family structures. You know how we talked about abolishing the biological family? Why do you think this woke, leftist, uber leftist organization is so focused on alternative family structures? Can we connect those dots? In the Communist Manifesto, they call for the abolition of the family this weekend on Socialism Saturday at 6 p.m. We're going to be watching a whole video about a socialist talking about abolishing the family. And right now, we're reading about an organization that sponsored the Socialist Reproductive Justice Conference I was at over the weekend. And all of these psychotherapists that were all trained at Smith College, apparently, appear to be really into alternative family structures. Now, there's nothing wrong with having an alternative family structure on its own, like everything is neutral. I'm just saying there are an awful lot of things that seem to be adding up to abolishing the biological family, and I hope people can see that. Her clinical orientation is influenced by both the narrative and the open dialogue traditions, and she is currently a senior clinical associate at the Institute of Dialogic Practice, founded by Mary Olson in Northampton, Massachusetts. In addition to her private practice at Translate Gender, she works with the Gender and Family Project at the Ackerman Institute at the group practice Northampton Sex Therapy Associates. Shannon published a paper in Women and Therapy Journal, introduced her trans feminist therapeutic approach, and the paper is titled Gender Disorder as Gender Oppression, a trans feminist approach to rethinking pathologicalization of gender nonconformity. That's Shannon. And then our last one is Davis, and Davis is also a co-director of Translate Gender. Davis, they, them. Davis graduated from Smith College School of Social Work in 2011. They relocated to the Pioneer Valley from San Francisco. That's shocking. They specialize in working with gender nonconforming queer and trans children, adolescents, and adults. They are a provider at the Center for Psychotherapy and Social Justice, which they co-founded and co-direct. They are a co-director of Translate Gender, where they currently co-lead 2 therapy groups in Northampton, one for trans and gender nonconforming young people and their families, and the other for trans and gender nonconforming caregivers. Davis has previously worked with adults experiencing extreme states of mind and/or major life disruptions, and in a community mental health setting for children and families. Davis self-identifies as queer and non-binary trans. I think that any transgender, gender expansive, non binary child would be very lucky to work with any of these obviously well adjusted people who have done the work for years on their own baggage to be ready to care for the mental health of the most vulnerable among us. How do people feel about that? That's the end of the article. People are free to leave a comment on the article and let me know. But I'm interested in the chat. How do you guys feel about translate gender? Are they doing the Lord's work? What do you think? Does any of this surprise you? Let me know in the chat. We'll give that a second for the replies to come in. In the meantime, I'll take the super chat from Naruto. Off topic, I just saw that Glenn Beck is going to discuss the recent Netflix Waco documentary on his show tonight. This is the 30th anniversary. Well, that'll be interesting, Naruto. I did kind of watch it. I kind of watched it. I like half watched it in the hotel the night before the socialist conference. So I do like it seemed very like fed to me, to be honest. Like it seemed very enamored with the ATF. Yep, looks like you guys had basically the same reaction I did. I can't believe this is real life. I don't want to share a country with these people. Communism is godless, not good. The energy is dark. Nope. Not surprised. Doesn't surprise me. Face. Laugh. Nervous laugh, I hope. Sounds unethical. It does sound unethical. It does, doesn't it? Jan's like, nope. Yeah. Yeah. So, guys, here's what I need everyone to do. I would really like to spread the word on this one as much as possible. So I'm putting the link in the chat on YouTube. And actually, let me pop over to is Rumble working now? Rumble wasn't working earlier, but I can pop over to some other. Well, you can just go to Karlyn Karlyn.substack.com. It's literally pinned right to the top, and I need people to share this. I need you to share it on Facebook. I need you to share it on Twitter. I need you to share it on whatever other social media platform you're on. I don't care if you only have 2 followers. I need you to share it. If you retweet the thread that I posted about this and do like a quote tweet, I will retweet you. So you can go on my Twitter, Dr. Karlyn B, and find the thread that I posted about this. If you do a quote tweet of that thread, I will retweet you. Or you can tag me in your post on it. Either way, I will retweet you. And so please help me share it. Please help me get the word out, because strangely, there are a lot of conservative media personalities who know about this because I've told them about it, and they all follow me anyway, and they all get my emails anyway because they're all on my mailing list. And strangely, none of them have covered it yet. Now, these are people that are not above like stealing my work and covering it without crediting me, which I wouldn't actually mind in this case so much because I actually just want the story out. But it would be really nice considering that conservative media is not going to step up again. It would be really nice if we could help work together to get the word out as much as possible, because I can't control whether or not conservative media does their goddamn job. All I can control is getting the information and putting it out there so that you guys can read it and then hopefully share it. And if you appreciate the work I'm doing, please support it. You can subscribe on my Substack, $5 a month, $50 a year. I'm not funded by anyone. I don't have $700 million to pay a settlement like Fox News does. I am doing this on my own. And so I can only do it with your support. So if you can sign up for a monthly subscription to keep me going and to fund future socialism conferences, which is exactly where that money's going to go, please make sure you sign up. $5 a month, $50 a year. It really does make all the difference, and I really do appreciate it. Naruto says, random, I feel old moment Netflix is officially shutting down DVD shipments. I mean, does anyone even watch DVDs anymore? It is what it is. Life goes on.